Making pizza opens you up to a lot of critique. They say pointing your fingers at someone leaves 3 fingers pointing back. However, it's important to know that the internationally recognized etiquette is a hand sign where you point all of your fingers at the pizza, thus absolving yourself. We're going to find out how to make a great date night pizza. A delicious and simple pizza with crusts that are soft on the inside but crispy on the outside. The very first domino fell while I was trying to make a pizza for an Italian girl. A lot of pressure cooking for your first home date. Just like thinking of a witty comeback as soon as the argument is over. And you think to yourself, if only I could go back in time and redo the date. But as they say, life is too short to make all of the mistakes yourself. And so here is the story of mine. Why make a pizza if you can buy one? Stick it in the oven, melt the cheese. Problem is, it's like last week's discount bakery items. Not bad, but uninspiring and bland. The crust is terrible. It's drier than your forgotten windowsill herbs. Crusts like these could be used as a revolutionary new construction material. Many people will say that pizzas simply shouldn't have crusts. If they are hard and dry, of course we don't like them. But would you enjoy a freshly baked bread hot out of the oven? And that's exactly what the crust is supposed to be. And then there's even more pizza attached to it. The first question is why don't we add more water to our dough so that it is less dry? We start off with half a cup of warm but not hot water, half a teaspoon of sugar, and half a teaspoon of yeast. Some people proof their yeast. Combine the yeast, water, and sugar. Why? To see if it's alive. For example, if you buy yeast and the guy takes it out of a lead-lined container, it is to keep it safe from the plutonium. Or if the yeast is old. I never really bother, but it does make a nice time lapse. Then we add 1 cup of high-grade or bread flour, half a teaspoon salt, 1 tablespoon of olive oil, a quick mix with a spoon, and then onto the mixer we go. We start off with a thick wheat soup. We need to get 2 proteins, glutenin and gliadin, currently strangers, to come together and become friends, and form the protein gluten. It will allow our pizza not to fall flat like a cake, but instead be nice and stretchy like a pizza dough should be. And so how do they become friends? We beat them repeatedly. The dough is done with its beatdown, when it no longer has the will to stick to the sides of the bowl, roughly 5 to 10 minutes on medium. If you are ethically opposed to mixes, you can instead mix the flour and water together, cover and leave them to autolyze. The gluten's journey of friendship will continue in confinement for about 2 hours, but it is okay to forget about it for longer. Now it's a tighter ball with little lines when you stir it. That's the gluten. Now, with sufficient friendship achieved, they feel comfortable enough to be rubbed together in oil, along with the rest of the ingredients. By having more water in our dough, it has made things very sticky. It will stick to everything. Itself, the table, your hands. Extra water might have gotten us into this mess, but don't worry, it's gonna get us out of it too. A quick spray of water on the bench top and your hands will keep everything non-stick. If you have patience, let the dough rest for a few minutes. The dough is like a rubber band now. We want to stretch and fold, to double it up a few times, making it stronger. If you'd like to spread the burden of cooking to another day, all you have to do is cut and place the dough in airtight containers. Cover in some olive oil, and then with reckless abandon you can frisbee or place them gently in the fridge. If you're on the 1-day challenge, leave it to double in size. We could set the table while we wait. Never sit across from each other on a date. It feels as you might as well be on different time zones, staring at each other awkwardly when there are pauses in conversation. You'll never even have an opportunity to even briefly touch each other organically, to make a big commitment and try and reach out in front of you and try and touch their hand. It's like that guy from work or school or wherever, that one you see often but you don't remember his name. To be honest, you think, kinda looks like a Philip to me. A day goes by. No big deal, you think. I've only just met them. But then days turn into weeks, turn into months. And it gets more awkward as time goes on. Then you meet probably Philip with his friends, probably Madeline and probably Timmy. He introduces them and turns out our predictions are way off. And now even worse, he expects you to introduce him. And you think, is it possible to die from embarrassment? At the start of the date, rip the band-aid off early, touch early but briefly. Next we'll form the pizza. Generously powder the bench top as if you're Scarface and the top of the dough. Using your fingers, spread out the dough from the center to get an even spread. And to keep some of the trapped gas along the edge. Flip it over and repeat. Sprinkle on a little bit of extra flour if it gets sticky. And onto a piece of baking paper. What if we added even more water to our dough? The short answer is this sloppy gruel or pancake batter. The wetter the dough, the harder it is to handle. And the drier the dough, the easier it is to form. But it leaves us with our original problem of having a dry crust. We'll cook these and compare them to our Goldilocks dough later on. Onto our sauce. First we crack open a can of tomatoes, along with a pinch of basil, oregano, a glug of olive oil, and some salt and pepper to finish. The olive oil really transforms the flavor of the sauce. I cannot understate the importance of these two together. It tastes like something more than just tomatoes and olive oil. It tastes like something completely new. On their own, it's fine, but the magic really comes when they're together. It's like having the free time of a kid with the money that you have as an adult. If it's bitter, just add a bit of sugar to balance it out. I usually do it by taste, maybe half a teaspoon or so. The plum varieties of tomato seem to work best for me. The others have less flesh and more juice that leaves the sauce very watery. If you have these, just drain the liquid part and you can add some tomato paste later. All we need to do is add our sauce gently over the pizza. Pop our pizza into the oven, preheat it as high as it'll go. And here we run into the most fundamental law of pizza. The only bad pizza you can make is one with an undercooked dough. Biting into undercooked dough is terrible. It sticks to the roof of your mouth like a snail seeped in superglue. The toppings shields the dough from heat like that guy, the jackass that sits in front of the heater and blocks everyone else. We treat this like all of our life problems and Google them. Diagnosis. We have contracted a cancerous bubonic plague. 2 additional options: use less sauce and toppings. And let's be realistic here. Or we pre-cook the base. It doesn't sound like too bad of an idea. Pop the dough in and only half cook it, and then we add our sauce and cheese. The results are okay, no doughy bits. But we've basically made bread with sauce. All our toppings slide off. This is unironically just an open-faced grilled cheese sandwich. Not enough heat, and it's a disgusting large sticky snail layer. But too much heat and it dries out and our toppings fall off. Pizza needs to be one thing, not 2 things of bread and toppings. And in our time of need, we will look to our trusty cast iron pan. Just like baking a sourdough at home in a Dutch oven. At this point, we need to go back in time and preheat our oven for about an hour. And while we're in the past, let the formed pizza dough rise, which will get us puffier crusts. If you were to suggest this to an Italian pizzeria, you would be publicly shamed, arrested, and probably deported. But they don't have to do this since they have screaming hot ovens. They get the crusts to puff up by turning the water in the dough into steam. But we have to work with what we've got, and what we've got is a lot less heat in our ovens. Now no toppings, just the sauce. Into our cast iron pan, lid on, and heaved into the oven. First, the preheated pan will cook the pizza from above with steam, and then from underneath as it's touching the pan. A bit like cooking an egg with a lid. This dough is now between a hot rock and a steam burn. And more heat into our dough means no disgusting undercooked bits. Secondly, the crusts don't dry as quickly as the steam keeps them moist. And the sauce helps us keep a very thin sticky layer, so that our toppings don't fall off. After 7 minutes, remove the lid and baking paper. Put on whatever toppings you'd like. If you like it saucy, now is the time to put on more sauce, not before. Back into the oven for 5 minutes. And now the crusts will form a very thin, crispy layer. The bottom will crisp up too. And finally, the cheese will melt. Cutting them smaller will make them melt faster. But too small and they split into little keto curds. We'll make another without the lid, with some onions and prosciutto to tell them apart. While it's cooking, I've learned far too many times now that a little bit of planning goes a long way. Like if you were to land on the moon. But how are we getting home? Generally, people like to have some sort of expectation on what's going to happen. And first of all, knowing that this is a date. And then more generally, what are you going to do? Where are you going to go? If you are not great at conversation, have something to do. And the worse that you are at conversation, the more things you need to do. And if you aren't funny, show them some memes. And if they don't like memes, then I would suggest that you turn to someone far more reputable. Finally, we can compare. The no-lid version, the texture is slightly more to the toast side of things rather than the fresh bread. If we had instead used our extremely dry dough, no matter the cooking technique, it would be even drier still. And finally, our extremely wet dough, all the extra water needed far too much heat and time to evaporate. But our Goldilocks dough in a Dutch oven style has a delicious, soft and crispy crust, and even finished with a delicious crispy base. The crusts are like hot, fresh bread out of the oven. We have unchained ourselves from these barbaric solutions with useless sauce. Admittedly, other barbaric techniques, but it's a whole different philosophy on what pizza is. Final step for our date is to learn some self-respect. No matter how cute or funny this girl is, when she starts asking you questions like, what's your mother's maiden name? What's the name of the street you grew up in? What's your blood type? Would you get a quick CT scan of your kidneys? We have to be ready. We need an ejection seat. You can't leave. This is your house. And to all the people that say pineapple doesn't belong on pizza, I will say you simply lack imagination. An important touch here is to cut them into squares. It really drives home the message. Just imagine you're going on a date and they serve you this. Surely there cannot be a clearer message. But I hear you say, if she's a psychopath, would she not like pineapple on pizza with psychotic cuttings? Well, okay, admittedly, the plan's not perfect. After being impressed by all the lengths that you have gone through to make a delicious pizza, the Italian girl will say, why don't you come over to my place next week and I'll show you how to make a real pizza.